econometrician, and later the head of the technology department at the government job where he worked. He was educated in Nigeria, Russia, and the United States. My mom, on the other hand, studied economics, had a master's degree in finance, and got her education in Nigeria, Austria, and the US. She worked in investment banking in Nigeria, building side hustles to earn extra income along the way. At first glance, we were a pretty middle-class Nigerian family. But there's a whole backstory behind how my parents got to where they were as the first generation of middle class in my family. While I go deeper into my family and personal background story throughout the course of this book, I'll set the stage here. My dad didn't start primary one, the first grade, until he was 13 years old. The reason? My paternal grandfather was not a fan of colonial education inherited from the British colonial rule in Nigeria. It also cost a lot of money, which he didn't have. So instead of school, my dad worked on his father's farm to help support his family. It was only after much convincing and well over a decade later that my grandfather allowed him to go to the closest school in the next town a few miles away, while my grandmother supported paying his school fees with the little money she made as a small goods trader. He made the journey to school every day on foot. My mom, who was fortunate enough to start her schooling when she got to school age, met my dad and got married at 19 with only a high school diploma. She didn't start college until after she had her 4 children and was in her mid-30s. She came upon the realization that she needed to be able to stand on her own 2 feet financially, and she saw education as a pathway to get there. Both of my parents come from polygamous families and had parents that were not formally educated, making them both the first generation to go to grade school, high school, and college in their respective families. Poverty was also a familiar experience for them both growing up. As soon as they graduated from high school and were able to earn any form of wages doing odd jobs here and there, they were obligated to support their younger siblings. Knowing about my parents' backgrounds and all the sacrifices they'd made to give me and my brothers a better life than they had growing up, I knew I had to do well. That was all they asked of me. So over the course of 11 years after graduating college, I worked as a test engineer, a technology consultant, and a business analyst. In most cases, I was the only woman on my team or in my department. I faced all kinds of prejudice, sexism, and racism. I was underestimated and opposed because of my gender. I struggled to find peers or mentors in my workplace that I could relate to as a woman of color. And many times, I struggled with the isolation of being the only one, the only Black person, the youngest person, the only woman. And so I retreated into my shell and just focused on the job I needed to do. I focused on doing it well so that when I called my parents, I could tell them everything was great. But despite my challenges, I loved the work I did. I felt a sense of exhilaration for every problem I investigated and solved, and for every solution and strategy I presented that was implemented, even when others took credit for my work. And for a while, I was pretty content keeping to myself at work, making good money, climbing my career ladder slowly but surely, and doing well. However, as time passed, I became less and less content, and I felt something was missing. Sure, my parents were proud of me, and I was making decent money. But I wanted to be more than just a number in a payroll file managed by a human resources department that could pull my file and fire me at any time if the company hit a bump in the road. I was tired of retreating and conforming at work. I was also going through my own personal life transitions. I had gotten married, moved cities, and become a mother to my beautiful twins. Time was flying by and life was happening, and I wanted to make sure I was being intentional with my time and intentional with the pursuit of my goals. When I started Clever Finance in 2015, it was born out of my personal need to create a safe space for myself and other women to talk about building wealth, our careers, and our lives. Its foundation was established from the personal blogs I had written over the years, where I talked about how I was spending, saving, and investing my money, challenges I was facing as a woman at work, the side hustles I was starting, and my dating relationships, among other topics I was interested in. I shared my